because we would open in a town and I'd get the reviews. Well, with that part, it's a great part.
Oh.
And so one night, I don't know what town we were playing, I finished the song, "Who Stinketh the Most," and I end the song, and audiences, yay! And I go stage left and get my coat off the back of the chair, and I'm storming out of the Congress with Georgia and North Carolina following me. And I looked at the side of the stage, and this man had run down the aisle and is standing there, and it was Sherman Edwards, who wrote 1776. And I was like, I'm a little flustered. I get off stage, and in the cast was, do you remember Reed Shelton?
Oh, very well.
The original Daddy Warbucks? Well, he was in that show, and he was doing Richard Henry Lee at the time. And I came off stage, and he hugged me, and he said, "If you never do it again, you did it tonight." And so the next day, they offered me the part.
And that was that.
And I went on to do it for a while on Broadway.
I had a friend in the, Broadway, Philip Astor. What did he play?
I know Phil Astor.
Phil
Polito.
Yes,
that's
Phil,
what
that's right.
He was in the original cast, yes.
And yeah, because he was telling me how he got it. He said his line was "Sit down, John."
Mm-hmm.
So he got it on that line.
Yeah.
He said he was just, isn't that funny?
Well, he went from playing Samuel Chase, which is the large girth guy, and then over the years he lost so much weight he ended up playing John Dickinson, which is like the sort of he's not the villain, but he's the guy who doesn't want to be. But Phil he lost about 150 pounds during the run of that show.
I didn't know him when he was heavier.
Oh yeah,
he was hevier. I look at what you had. Oh, Something's Afoot. I discovered you in Something's Afoot.
Really?
I'm going to tell you that the nastiest nephew of any of the nephews, and I saw it in preview. And the theater was east of Broadway, what theater that is.
The Lyceum.
The Lyceum Theater. And I said to my husband at the time, I wonder if it's too late, we should put money in the show. And I loved it so.
People loved it.
People loved it. It didn't get the greatest.
Yeah, I tell you,
kind of money.
Clive Barnes was writing for the New York Times at the time. This is what's wrong with criticism.
Yes.
In my humble opinion. I can quote his review. Not all of it, but he said, "The audience adored the show, but they were misled." Now, what the heck does that mean?
I thought you were going to say, but I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's basically what he was saying. And but they did. We'd get standing ovations in the middle of the show.
Sure. Oh.
Remember Tessie O'Shea?
Of course. I played her role many years later at Actors Playhouse.
Did you really?
At Coral Gables, I did that role.
Oh, Miss Tweed.
Miss Tweed.
Yes.
I was Miss Tweed.
And you know what? I can't tell you. It's like every time I'm starting a new show or something, and if there are young people in the cast, there's always someone who comes to me. It happened yesterday. He comes to me and says, in college I played Nigel, which was the role I played.
Yes.
And so it's still being done everywhere. It's wonderful.
It is, why not? The set is the star of that show.
The set
is
fantastic.
It was done at Caldwell Theater last season or the season before.
Really?
I forget. Yes, very, very successfully. But you have to explain to those 10 little Indians is the way that we explain it, of course. It's the story that little by little they get killed
off.
One
by one the cast starts getting knocked off.
Yes, what comes out of the wall, and the banister.
I was killed by a sconce on the head. And then I think Lady Manly Prow was electrocuted. It's one by one they all.
And I made it to the very end in that chair.
Yes.
Oh, my scarf. I think it was my scarf.
That's right.
Oh, marvelous, marvelous stories. You know, it's just so much fun talking. And you did do Annie, too.
I did.
Yes.
For a long time.
Really?
I loved it, yeah.
Did you play it with Reed?
No. Yes, I did. What am I saying? No.
Okay.
Not originally. We didn't do it together originally. We actually, very early on, played Miami Beach, the Jackie Gleason.
When it was Jackie Gleason. Yes, yes,
Great
yes,
actor named Norwood Smith played it.
Yes, I recognize the name, sure.
But I ended up doing it with Reed a couple of years later. Yeah. In fact, we closed. It was called the Second National Company, but it was one of those. They dangle it in front of you. Oh, they still do it. So we're going to play Honolulu. And so, well, I'll sign on. I'll sign for another year. And so, but we actually did play Honolulu for 6 weeks. It was
so there you are.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a bus and truck because there's no way they could get you to Honolulu
Truck
on a
can't
bus.
get there, right?
Yeah, but no, I love, this is so much fun for us. I don't know if it is for the audience. It gets to be so terribly in, and we remember wonderful things that happened. But the producers on Broadway, then the producers, the film. Tell me about Mel Brooks. My audience really wants to know Mel Brooks.
Well,
what he's really like.
I was always a huge fan of Mel Brooks. I mean, you know, back in the 70s, you looked forward to the next Mel Brooks movie. You know, and the late 60s rather, when I saw the Producers movie with Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder, I had never seen anything so subversive, at least comically. Yes. And it always stayed with me as one of my favorite films. I'm sitting at home in LA, and the phone rings. It's my agent, and he says, Vinnie Liff called. Now, Vinnie Liff is one of the great casting agents of all time. He's not with us any longer. Yes. And he said, Mel Brooks has written a musical version of The Producers, and Nathan Lane is going to be doing Max Bialystock, and they'd like you to do Roger Debris. Well, they didn't have to remind me who that was, because I was a huge fan of the movie. So my first question was, does he still make his entrance in an evening gown? I said, yes. He said, but the difference is this. You get to play Adolf Hitler in Springtime for Hitler.
Yes, who did it in the film?
Dick Shawn.
Dick Shawn, yes.
But they LSD was the name of his character. Yes. And it just, they didn't feel it would work this many years later, that whole, hey baby, sort of stuff, you know. So how lucky was I
to play Roger in both costumes?
Yeah. Yes, and get to play Adolf Hitler in a musical comedy. That doesn't happen too often.
No,
lucky for us, the audience, I'll never forget the first night in Chicago. We tried out in Chicago. Before the show started, we had an overture, and the first thing you heard was dum 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 dum. Well, the audience went mad. We all looked at each other like, oh my God, what are we sitting on here? And it got more and more. And of course, by the time we got to New York, the old-fashioned thing of lines down the block, that had long ago disappeared because of Ticketron or all of that stuff. But we had lines down the block. And no one could figure out why or what about this show made people want to go stand in line to buy a ticket. Was it because it was so old-fashioned? I don't know. But it was truly one of the great experiences of life. Now, about Mel Brooks, the greatest. I mean...
And you know, I have to leave it at that.
Okay.
He is the greatest.
Yeah.
But I say people come out singing, and they still sing Springtime.
Exactly.
I mean, to have a musical of that, and to be in the Broadway show, to be in the film, and anytime you want to do it, you can do it, I'm sure. But we're so glad to have you here. We've got you in Florida occasionally, because I know that this is your home now, but you're going to be in New York, and you just came back from Ottawa, Canada, and doing Guys and Dolls.
Yes, with the symphony orchestra, 75-piece orchestra.
Isn't that phenomenal? Well, wasn't this phenomenal? Wasn't this extraordinary? How often do we get Gary Beach here? And now that he's here this time, he's going to be doing something spectacular. He's going to come back and talk all about it. I had so much fun now, Gary.
Loved it.
Thank you. This was so great. Sharing these stories. To me, it's sitting over a drink or a cup of coffee and remembering, and that's what we do. And when I ask people, you can't remember if you don't go, please go to the theater.